Номер 11 президент Российской Федерации Владимир Путин.
To the podium claims that he is a leader of a free democracy. They have elections, he has been voted in, and they have a constitution that offers freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and many other freedoms. However, even though this creates an image of a democratic country, it is nothing but a mirage. Vladimir Putin has taken what little chance of being a democratic country after the fall of the Soviet Union and once again turned the country into an authoritarian-ran government. Vladimir Putin is an authoritarian. Many of the freedoms the Constitution grants have been all but banished, which we brought up throughout the video. According to New York Times journalist Stephen Miller, who spent 7 years in Russia and wrote a book called The New Tsar, Stephen claims that even though members of Russia's parliament basically beg him to change the constitution so that Putin can stay in as president for as long as he seems fit, Putin is too smart for that. The reasoning: democracies and countries that hold elections are favored and treated better throughout the world. But don't kid yourself, Putin has a history of rigging elections, stealing billions for himself and friends, and silencing his opposition. How do the people of Russia view their president? Actually very well. According to a 2016 Gallup poll, over 80% of people still favor Vladimir Putin, even through all of the hardships and economic swings. What is the reasoning? The image of a leader in Russia has always been that of a strong man who is willing to do what is needed for the country under any circumstances, almost like a father figure. In fact, during times of war in Russia, where they have either invaded other countries like Crimea, his popularity has actually increased. Don't believe me? See for yourself.
Парень снова влип в дурные дела, подрался, наглотался какой-то мути. Он так меня достал, я его прогнала, и я хочу теперь такого, как Путин. Такого, как Путин, полного сил. Такого, как Путин, чтобы не пил. Такого, как Путин, чтоб не обижал. Такого, как Путин, чтоб не убежал.
One reason that could explain Putin's high popularity is the strict control the government has over the news networks, and since the internet, more and more sites have been banned due to casting Russia in a negative light. Some journalists have not been able to deal with this and have quit, such as American journalist Liz Wall.
Personally, I cannot be part of a network funded by the Russian government that whitewashes the actions of Putin. I'm proud to be an American and believe in disseminating the truth, and that is why, after this newscast, I'm resigning.
Now, of course, not every journalist has just quit due to the government control of the news networks and other media outlets, and many people have spoken out against Putin. Unfortunately, throughout Putin's reign, there has been a pattern for journalists and politicians who have created some sort of opposition. What has happened to them? Well, I will let my little doll friend Chucky explain this one to you. Go ahead, Chucky.
Presto, you're dead.
Death hasn't always been the answer to situations like this. Sometimes it has resulted in torture and people being imprisoned under false circumstances. But for now, we're going to talk about the people who have possibly been killed under Vladimir Putin. First, journalist Anna Politkovsky was a Russian journalist who accused Putin of turning Russia back into a police state. She was killed outside her apartment, and the 5 men who were convicted admitted they were paid $100,000 by an unknown person. Alexander Litvinenko was a former KGB agent like Putin who was killed by a poisoned cup of tea. Before he died in the hospital, Alexander wrote a note saying it was Putin who had him killed, something that was actually backed up by a British inquiry that concluded it was most likely done by the FSB and Putin. Litvinenko was a major critic of Putin, accusing him of blowing up an apartment block for political gain, which will be discussed here in a little bit, and accused Putin of killing Anna Politkovsky. Stanislav Markelov and Anastasia Barbarova were human rights lawyers who were actually representing people who were critics of Putin. Markelov was shot outside the Kremlin, and Anastasia Barbarova was actually walking with him and shot as well when she was trying to help. Boris Berezovsky was a Russian oligarch who fled to Britain after he fell out with Putin. There has been many questions on his death actually being a suicide. Even the coroner couldn't explain how he actually died. Sergei Yushchenko was a Russian politician who was killed just hours after his political organization Liberal Russia had been recognized by the Justice Ministry as an actual party. Editor of Russian Forbes was killed in a drive-by shooting. He wrote about the corruption of Putin and the Russian wealthy. Boris Nemtsov, outspoken politician of Putin and the Ukrainian takeover of Crimea. He wrote in-depth articles of Putin and the government corruption. He was killed in February of 2015. Russian politician Denis Vorenkov, who was killed on March 23rd. He was a major political leader and outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin. Now that you understand the current state of the Russian government and Vladimir Putin as a leader, let's go back in time and show you what led to the current state of Russia. Vladimir Putin was born October 7th, 1952. His dad was a fighter in World War II for the Soviets, and his mother was a factory worker. His two brothers died prior to Putin being born. The Putin family grew up in a very poor one-bedroom apartment. They had to fend off rats. This actually led to where Putin claims he learned a very important life lesson. The story goes that Putin had a rat trapped in the corner and that the rat knew it was about to meet its certain doom, so it jumped at him and attacked. The lesson being any person cornered is capable of anything, including Putin himself. Growing up, Putin loved judo. He used this as a life lesson as well. Judo is an art of when to be calm and when to attack, almost like chess. Putin used this analogy on how to make correct decisions. Putin was always a fan of spy movies and books. This led to him getting a degree in law and joining the KGB. His job was foreign intelligence and to monitor foreigners and officials in Leningrad. This is apparently the beginning of how he created such a talent on how to read people and manipulate them. And finally, how Putin got to power. Boris Yeltsin was the Democratic president who took over after the fall of the Soviet Union. He believed in democracy, but unfortunately, he also fell into a lot of the old Soviet habits such as bribing and money laundering. An investigation was opened to look to where a lot of the missing money went, and miraculously, this problem went away after Putin, now a part of Yeltsin's office, created a fake video of the politician who opened the investigation. The video contained what appeared to be the politician in bed with two other women. This destroyed his reputation and essentially made him resign. When Yeltsin's presidency was coming to an end, he was not in the best of health and feared spending the rest of his life in prison. He needed someone who could win the presidency. He chose Vladimir Putin and rose him to the spot of prime minister. Shortly after is when the controversy started that has lingered over Russia since 1999. An apartment building was bombed and blamed on the Chechens. Vladimir Putin swore revenge.
Будем преследовать террористов везде. В аэропорту, значит, вы уж меня извините, в туалете поймаем, и в сортире их замочим, в конце концов. Все, вопрос закрыт окончательно.
The controversy is, however, that many now believe that this is an inside job to create mass popularity for Putin. A couple days after the incident, another bomb was found inside an apartment complex but was defused before it exploded, and FSB agents were found to be to blame. The material that was used was the same of the first apartment complex. The material was explosives and detonators used commonly by FSB police and the Russian military. Inside job or not, this tactic worked. Putin's strong leadership during the crisis increased his popularity for president from 3% into the high 20s. Boris Yeltsin shortly after resigned due to health concerns, which he then left the presidency to Putin before an actual election was held. A decision according to People, Yeltsin later regrets deeply because of what Putin did to his democratic society, basically changing him back over to an authoritarian government. The first thing Putin did, though, was give Yeltsin what he wanted all along: the lack of fear of having to spend the rest of his life in jail, and of course immunity. This has been the story of Vladimir Putin. I will now go over to my conclusion, and make sure to keep following Russia because it is very vital to what is going on today. Thank you.